Hello. Today I'm going to take a bit of a risk and try some topiary on these two box plants. And the inspiration for what I'm trying to attempt is this aftershave bottle. Let me get a bit closer, give you a closer view. Hopefully you can see it's a cylinder with a sphere on the top. And that is what I'm going to try and achieve with these two box plants. And the reason I'm taking a risk is because it's not something I've ever tried before, and I've had these lovely box plants for about 15 years. So if it all goes completely wrong, I'll be a little bit sad. But before I get started on the topiary, exciting news on the olives. And if you watch my vlogs on olive tree care, you'll know that I've got 4 standard olive trees and they're all identical. And the exciting news is that the flower buds are starting to turn into blossom. And if the amount of buds I've got on these plants is an indication of how many olives I'm going to get, I'm going to have quite a harvest. But what's interesting is the fact that this is the only one of the 4 so far that started to turn into blossom. And my mind is curious as to why. Perhaps this one is getting more light reflected off this white door. Or perhaps it's because it's in a more shaded position. Perhaps the average temperature in this little corner is slightly higher. But do have a look at my vlogs on olive tree care if you're interested in that, and I'll give you an update in the near future. I've seen a lot of topiary videos on YouTube, and they do tend to use hand shears. And I have a set of hand shears, but they're not very sharp. So I'm going to risk it with these electric shears. I've also got a pair of topiary shears for the finer detail. That's the shape I'm looking for. So what I intend to do is use the circle of the pot as a guide to trim up. Then I'm going to go horizontal. I've already checked and I know that I have 2 vertical stems in the middle of these bushes. So that vertical stem will support a ball. And you may have noticed there already is a little tiny bit of topiary on the top of each of these bushes. And that's because we were attempting to get a little bird shape. And I'm going to leave those on. So by the end of this video, we should have a cylinder, a flat top, almost a sphere, although I'm not sure it's going to make a complete sphere, with a little bird shape on top. And I tend to do my box trimming in either late June or early July. I also have the front hedge, which was a series of box balls, and I'm going to try and prune them into a kind of loose cloud formation, a cloud hedge, and that will be in an upcoming vlog. And I also have 4 very large box balls and another cylinder with an obelisk in the centre, and I intend pruning that into 4 almost button or cushion shapes and a very tightly trimmed cylinder. And you can see that in another upcoming vlog. So there's going to be like a series of 3 topiary vlogs. So without further ado, let me get on with trimming this and seeing how it turns out. Wish me luck. And I'm just going to trim upwards in a smooth vertical motion. And I'm going to try and avoid going from side to side, and hopefully I do that and I progress around the plant using the pot as a guide with my eye vertically down. I shall end up with a nice shaped cylinder. That's the theory anyway. Let's give it a go. Well, I've gone around it once, Let's see how that's looking from a distance. Right, we still need to do a bit more. And you'll notice that I'm only cutting in an upward direction, and that is deliberate, because if I start pulling downwards it might pull the shape and the form of the bush out and I might lose the shape. So I'm going to continue just slowly taking bits away as I go. And I remember from my O-level maths that a circle can be achieved by an infinite number of straight lines, tangents. So that's what I'm doing effectively with this straight line, going up and moving and going up and moving and going up until eventually I will have a nice cylinder. And I can see even from this close up that it's starting to form a cylinder. And a good tip when you're doing topiary is to step back and have a look from a distance, because you see more from a different perspective. It's coming together quite nicely. There's probably a bump there that could come away, and then I'll be going in at about this level, I think, with my horizontal. Now, this is the bit that I'm a little bit nervous about. And if I put my hand about there, that's about the maximum height I can get a complete cylinder. And if I go in there, I can see that I will be just about left with enough to form almost a sphere, but not quite. And of course that sphere might take another couple of seasons to grow into a perfect sphere. But that's the beauty of nature. You can't force it. You can only control it to a certain extent. Should we do it? Should we go in? Let's give it a try. As I do this, I'm being very careful not to go into the central stalk and not to damage the bark on the outside of that central stalk, because of course the bark of a plant is how it gets its nutrients. So we should continue to do this very tentatively. Take a step back and have a look. That's not too bad. I'm relatively pleased with that. For a rough cut, it needs to have a little bit of finessing to get a nice flat top. And I can see the early start of a ball shape on the top. Now, a sphere would have a top shape, so I think I can afford to go in here. And by doing this, I'm getting some more definition into this shape, which eventually is going to be a bird. You may not be able to see it now, but it will be eventually a bird. Making topiary is in itself a hobby. And it's not something that happens overnight. I have a saying, perfection is the enemy of good. And for me, this is good. And I never aim for perfection in the garden because it would put me in an early grave. This is going to take time. It's not an overnight process. I'll flatten this off next, and then I will expect that to turn green as new growth appears from the end of each of the cut sticks. And at the same time, new growth should appear underneath here from all those branches I've cut into, and that will fill out the bottom of the ball. And you can come back in a few months' time and I'll give you an update, so subscribe for that. So let's get this flattened off. I'm going to follow exactly the same process. Like a gardening version of sheep shears. Relatively inexpensive. I think they were only about £9. They do a good job because the blades run across each other. They're both sharp edges. It gives a nice clean cut. I've gone and got my secateurs because there's a couple of thicker ones here in the centre which I'm going to take down and in. And if I take them down and in, my theory is the growth will come from down and within and fill this hole here. There is a bit of a bald patch, but I can see growth on the inside of here. And box is quite forgiving because it will grow back from hardwood. The gardener in me wants to make a lot of box cuttings out of these as an experiment, and indeed that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull them both together and have a look. You know, from a distance, they look a lot better than they do close up from where I am. I'm really very pleased with these cylinders. As I've already said, the top will get green and knit together and we'll have a lovely flat surface. And hopefully we'll get some new growth from underneath here, which will come out to fill out the sphere. Please do subscribe and come back for an update on these box plants. I'm looking at that one. There's another branch has got to come off. I'll see you soon.